Hey y'all, I just wanted to make a quick kind of tutorial video on Kano. I'm not qualified to make this at all, but I'm a relatively new player, so I think I have a good outlook as far as what to focus on when picking up Kano and going over some of the basic combos. There's plenty of videos already that have pretty much covered this topic, but I think it gets a little more complicated with Floodgates, Depot, and things like Kindle. So I just wanted to kind of go through some basic combos and give a basic overview of the deck. But anyway, so this is the current deck I'm running. Um, this is basically the normal combo deck. So just to kind of go through Kano, there's basically three main. Well, actually, there's two main Kano cards, and then everything else is basically ways to enable that card. Those cards. So the two cards are Aether Wildfire and Blazing Aether. And pretty much what these do is do exponential damage. So the basic idea of any Kano combo, as far as our kill combo, is we want to hit them with a wildfire for however much we can, play another spell afterwards at least, and then finish off with a blazing aether. So at the very basic of it, if we hit a wildfire for 4, the next attack, even if it's a 1 attack, or the next spell, if it's a 1 attack, it will deal 5, and then blazing will do 4 plus 5, 9, plus another 4 from the buff, so it'll do 12. So 12 plus 9, 21 damage if we just hit a baseline 4. So the basic idea is we want to buff Wildfire. Well, there's two basic ideas. So the way to extend those to ridiculous numbers is we either want to buff Wildfire as high as possible and go tall, or we want to add as many spells in between as possible. So let's say we have another spell in between, right? We're hitting for 4, we're hitting for 5, we're hitting for 5 again. So that's 14 total, and then blazing will hit for 19. So 14 plus 19, if I can do math, that would be, what is 14 plus 19? 33? 14 plus 19, yeah, that should be 33. So obviously, you add another spell in there and blah blah blah. So the basic idea with this version of the deck is we lost tomes, which basically allow us to draw and have resources. But the basic idea is if we hit floodgates in our combo, they will draw us 2 more cards, which basically lets us go extremely wide. So any floodgates, if we draw 2 blues, we can basically keep straining spells. So if I hit a floodgates, I draw 2 blues. That's 2 more Kano banishes. If they're 0 cost, that's 2 more spells. If I banish a floodgate again, then basically I get to draw another 2 cards. So you can go extremely wide with these cards. So the basic shell right now is 9 to 6 floodgates. And then you have a bunch of blues, usually anywhere from 33 to 36 at the moment. And right now I'm testing the more tempo list, which has Aether Flare, which is more focused on playing Aether Flare on their turn to get cards out of their hand or just do significant amount of damage, hopefully get them to pop their Spell Void. And then you have things like Boom and blah blah blah. But most lists should be pretty similar to this. The main difference is some lists may not have these flares and snapbacks in the main board. They may have yellow overflow, or not yellow overflows, yellow floodgates, and then 3 more blues. So that's kind of the basic idea. Okay, so first we're going to go over the very basic combo. There's been plenty of videos on this already you can reference, and it really hasn't changed almost at all from then. But, just to have this all in one place and kind of give my thoughts and perspective on it, I'm going to record it here, or go over it here. So the very most basic Kano combo is you want to play a Wildfire, and then you want to play a spell in between, and then you want to play a Blazing at the end. So the very basic things you need for this combo is you need a Blazing Aether, either an Arsenal or hand. You need a Wildfire in Arsenal hand, and ideally 3 blues. There may be situations where you actually don't need a blue, depending on if you have pots or what you ragamuffins at the top, but it's really kind of dependent. So that's why it's really important to kind of know what's on top of your deck. So that's why we run things like Clarity and Depot, so we can manipulate what's on top of our deck. Because in some cases, you may not actually be able to combo. So basically, just to give some general information for someone who's new is you want to Kano during your opponent's turn, and ideally, unless lethal is on the stack and you have to fire, you want to wait until they do their attacks, because that's going to be taking cards out of their hand. So in this case, just for demonstration's sake, ideally what I would do is I would let this test resolve. It's not lethal, so I'll even let it hit, and then I would go off. So at this point, this is where we're going to go off. So one thing to know is this combo right now is not guaranteed. I have no idea what's going to be the first banish off the top of my deck. So this isn't going to be necessarily the best chance to combo. So ideally, how I like to think about it, if I had these cards, I wouldn't necessarily commit to going off. But if they got rid of all their cards in their hand and were empty-handed, or their Spell Void was down or something like that, I would probably at least do the Kano banish to check. So the first step of this combo, I mean, realistically, what you want to do is you want to cast Wildfire and then cast Blazing at the end, but we can at least go ahead and do the first Kano Banish to kind of see what's on top of our deck. So the first thing I would do here is I'm just going to Kano Banish blind, and I'm going to hope that I see a spell we can play off the top. So Lessons in Lava, that'll work. Let me make sure this will work, actually. So let's count the resources here just to kind of go through the math here. So right now we have a card banish. It's going to cost 1. And then we have Wildfire, which is going to cost 2. So that is basically 3 total. So that'll be 1 blue. Then we also need to Kano banish 1 time. So that'll be the other blue. And then we'll finally need 1 resource, which will come from Spellfire, to cast the Blazing. So realistically, this is going to be dependent on what we ragamuffins to whether we can Metacarpus, everything or not. So here's where the really tricky part of Kano comes in. I need to figure out a way to get this Wildfire out of my hand. Or not out of my hand. I need to figure out a way to have this Wildfire be the only card in my hand. So to do that, I need to get rid of these 2 Aether Flares. Basically by pitching them. So how we're going to do that is we're going to Crucible 1. So that way we have 2 floating. The reason we don't, and this should be fine because we're going to Ragamuffins to get an extra resource, by the way. But the reason we're going to Crucible here is because otherwise we'd have to Kano banish, and in that case we just have an extra Kano banish, and then we wouldn't guaranteed have the resources to Wildfire, and we don't know what the banish is going to hit. Okay, so we'll let this Crucible resolve. Then we will Kano banish, and this will now be on the stack, so this hasn't resolved yet. Now we're going to hit Rags here. We get a yellow, which is not great, but it's better than a red. So then we'll put the Wildfire on top. We'll banish it. Okay, so now basically let's just count up our resources here. So we have 2, that'll go to the Wildfire. We need 1 for the Lessons, so that'll come from the Lessons, so we'll have 1 left from the Lessons, and then we'll have a Blazing Aether, which will cost 1 from Stormstriders. So that basically means we have our Spellfire Cloak right now, which will give us 1 extra resource, so that means we can at very least Metacarpus this Wildfire. So I'm going to play the Wildfire. We're going to say yes to Metacarpus, and I'll pitch Lessons to do that. So bam, the Wildfire hit for 6. Next, we will Lessons again. We don't have the resources to Metacarpus this because we really need to play the Blazing. So I will say no here. This should do 3 plus 6. This will do 9 damage. Usually you'd want a tutor card for here. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to say no just to show you the very basic combo. And then last, we can pop this Spellfire Cloak to get an extra resource. We can pop these Stormstriders, and then we can play Blazing. So just to do some math here, Lessons did 9. Arcane or Wildfire did 6, so that's 15 damage done so far. So Blazing will do 15 plus 6 there, so that should be 19 damage for a total of, I don't know, we'll check at the end. We can't afford to pay this, so we'll say no. This will resolve. This will hit for 21, not 19. Apparently I can't do math. So then we'll pass this turn, end of turn, and we'll just go ahead and concede, and we'll see how much damage was dealt there. So 36 damage, so not quite lethal. If we could have pumped it another time, that would have been lethal. So, sometimes be a little wary. I mean, if you get your opponent down to 4, that's probably pretty good, especially if their Spell Void's gone. They should be dead in a turn or 2. Okay, so next up is the X form of the basic combo, and this is the Lessons Wildfire line. So this is basically the exact same thing as a Blazing's line, except instead of doing a 0 cost in the middle, we're going to do this 1 cost Lessons in Lava in the middle. And it's basically a little better because we're not playing blind off the top to make sure we get a blue spell that we can cast. In this case, even if there's a whiff on top of our deck, we should still be able to cast this Lessons in Lava. Okay, so first is going through the math. We'll basically need to Storms and Lessons, that'll be 2. We'll need to Kano banish and Wildfire, that'll be 5. So it's the 5 plus the 2 will be 7 resources. And then we'll need to banish again. So basically we will need 10 resources. If we look here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But then, we'll get something off Rags. So we'll basically have at least 11 resources. So we should be able to pay for this Crucible here. So first thing, I'm going to pitch this Crucible. Okay, we're going to let that resolve. We are going to Kano banish. Then we will Ragamuffins. We will put this card on top. We did get a yellow, which isn't great, but it's better than a red at least. So now we want to wait until we basically don't want to let this Kano banish resolve till after we've cast this Lessons from our arsenal. So let's just do some counting here. So we have 2 right here. We have 4 from this, 5. Basically this is going to cost 2. It's going to cost 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have the Kano banish on the stack. So sorry, so we need 1, 2 for this, 3, 4. So 1, 2 for the wildfire, 1 for storms, 1 for lessons. So that'll take us to 4. We have 5. So we should be able to pay for the metacarpus nodes on this first. So there we go. We'll pay the 1, banish that. Go. And then we will pop the spellfire, we will storms. Lessons here. Shooter. Then from here we will get the blazing. The blazing will banish. Cast the blazing here. So again, this combo is really good because it's guaranteed, unlike the last one where there's kind of variance based on whether we have to blind hit off the top. This, you know, you basically just need those 2 cards and blues and you have a guaranteed combo. Yeah, but you need to make sure you have only blues in hand. Otherwise, if we hit something different off the top there, look, if you don't have a blue in hand, if you don't ragamuffins a blue, it's not guaranteed. So you basically need to make sure you have 3 blues in hand, a wildfire or lessons in arsenal, and then a wildfire or lessons in your hand. But that's the second basic combo. So again, pretty similar to the first. It's just we're casting a 1-cost spell, and we really have it guaranteed because we don't have to worry about hitting a blind flip off the top. So if we just look here, this was we were able to pump the wildfire twice, but we weren't able to pump any other spells. But 39 combo, so almost lethal. Okay. So this is not an exact situation. This is just kind of a random. I just played through a few, things here until I got a wildfire and blazing, and then I also set some pots up here. So the main thing that's going to be different is now we have e-pots available, which lets us be able to do different things, with our resources here. So we can let's go through this real quick. So first, let's talk about Potion of Deja Vu. This lets us put certain cards on top of our deck, which can be very, very helpful. We have a blazing here. Which is the same thing we had last time. So this will be the last card we play, but now we have 2 wildfires. So basically we should be able to structure this so these both get buffed here, and then we just have 2 random blues. These aren't important, and ideally, I'd wait another turn and play an e-pot and then do this, but for the sake of this right now, we're just gonna go through it as we will. So let's kind of do some basic math here, and just go through what we're gonna need again. So we will be able to pitch this wildfire for like Crucible, so that'll be 1. Let's just say that. Then we'll have 6 left over. And we also have an e-pot. So we'll really have like 8 resources available. And then the good thing is, and this is why D-pot is so strong, we'll be able to guarantee we ragamuffins a blue with our other wildfire. So the basic idea of just me looking at this combo, and this is not me analyzing it or anything, we're going to pitch wildfire, we're going to pitch e-pot and the other e-pot really. Then we're going to pop Deja Vu, we're going to banish the first wildfire, and then we're going to make sure that we ragamuffins an e-pot with the remaining wildfire. So that way we know we're getting a blue off the ragamuffins, which is giving us basically an extra 3 resources, and then we're also going to be able to cast a wildfire in between. So let's just do some math here. So if we pitch this one, or we can overpitch the wildfire to the Kano banish, which is a trick there. So we'll have 1 floating with 1 Kano banish on the stack. We'll be able to Kano banish again. We will pop the rags. We'll get another blue. The first Kano banish will resolve. We'll banish a wildfire. That'll be 2 with a blue in hand. So 3, 4, 5, 6. So we should have the resources here because basically, that should cover the casting of the 2 wildfires as well as the blazing aether. So first thing we're going to do again is we need to get these cards out of our hand so we can ragamuffins. So in this case, I know I'm going to need 2 Kano banishes. So this is a trick that is very important on Kano, is you can overpitch 2 Kano banish. So in this case, I'm going to pitch the wildfire and I'm going to pitch the e-pot. So really in this case, I don't need to overpitch. I could probably Crucible because I think I'll have enough, but just to make it so you don't have to do the math right then and there, which you probably should be doing, but I'm not a responsible Kano player, so do it at your own risk. This just gives us some more flexibility where we haven't committed this resource yet because we don't necessarily know what we're going to do with it. So right now we have 1 Kano on the stack. We'll go ahead and banish again, put another Kano on the stack, and this is where we pop the D-pot and where it is super powerful. So we're going to pop the D-pot here. And you want to put 1 e-pot on top. It's a 3rd card. We're not going to deal with it. It doesn't really matter. And then here, you can place it in either order. It's just kind of preference, I guess. For me, I'm going to go ahead and put the wildfire on top, and we'll just let the first banish resolve. So right now, what's on top of our deck is we have a wildfire and 2 e-pots, which is great. We're like, freaking geniuses here. So we'll let the first resolve. We'll banish the wildfire. And now we know we have a blue on top, which is perfect. So we're going to pop this rags. We're going to put this wildfire back on top of our deck. We're going to let this Kano banish resolve. So now we have 2 wildfires here. So this is going to do exponential damage. So now we're good to fire. So let's do some math here. Let's go ahead and say the Spellfire is for the Storm Striders. So that'll be just for blazing. So basically we have 3, and then we have from Epot, we have 2 more resources. We're going to have 5 resources total. So 2, 3, 4. So basically we're only going to be able to pay for, oh, and we have 1 floating too. So we should be able to Crucible and Metacarpus the first wildfire. Keep in mind, there's probably edge cases where, like, if you need to buff a flood that doesn't have any amp, it may not actually be the case if they completely stuff your wildfire. But anyways, for the most part, you're going to want to always commit your resources to buffing the first wildfire as much as possible. So basically the way I'm trying to think about this is I'm going to have 1, 2 resources, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the 1 floating. These cost 4. So I'll basically be able to pay I'll have 2 free resources to buff. But we're going to want to buff the first wildfire, not, twice basically, instead of buffing each one once. And that's just how the damage works. If we buff this by 6, it'll, basically buff this wildfire by the 2 as well. So basically we're investing by doing it first. So first we need to make sure we do the Crucible and let it resolve. So it'll buff the next one. Then we can play the wildfire here. Bada boom. We'll pay for the Metacarpus. So this wildfire will now come in for 6. Bam. We hit for 6. Now we have 2 mana more to cast this next wildfire. This should come in for 6 + 4, 10. We basically have the resource, but we need it for Striders, so we don't have the resource to pay here. So this will come in for 10. And now Blazing is going to come in for it'll come in for 16 times 2, so like 32. So, this would definitely be a one-hit KO. Sorry. You need to banish with Spellfire first, and then we can Storm Striders. Bam, bada boom, bada bing. So now we have this out of hand, so it's 32 damage. So if we pass the turn here, end of turn, and then we concede. This basically is a 48 damage combo. So just a very basic combo showing you how D-Pots, can be helpful, and E-Pots as well. Okay, so again, I just played a couple things here, played some pots to give us kind of a unique situation here. So now we're going to go into the power of Floodgates and why this is such a strong card. So basically here, it's pretty much a similar setup to before, except this time we have a wildfire in Banish. So this will get a little complicated when we talk about Blazing here, but anyways, okay, so we have a wildfire in Banish, we have a Blazing in hand, we have 2 Epots, which will probably be overkill in a lot of these situations, but since I had them in hand, I played them, and just to kind of show you some of the crazy things we can do here. And then we have, a potion of Deja Vu, we have a Floodgates, and 2 blues in hands. So Floodgates, 2 blues in hand, when you have a Deja Vu in Banish, is basically completely cracked. You can do very crazy things with this. So basically, we're just going to go through this, and I'm going to show you, how I would think about this. So the first thing I'm going to do really is I'm going to go ahead and get this wildfire out. So to do that, I'm going to pop storms, and I'll just go ahead and banish the Floodgates. Bam, storm is popped. I'm going to go ahead and pay for the Crucible just because we have these Epots. I'm not counting my resources. You really should count your resources. But for me, I kind of have a feel that this should work out. And then, as we go through the turn, we'll figure it out. But the main reason I'm doing this is because I have 2 Epots, which should give me more than enough resources I need to do this. We'll go ahead and play Crucible. And we'll go ahead and get the Destructive out of hand just to have it in the pitch zone already. Bam, Destructive out of hand. And then let's see here what we want to do. Yep, we'll go ahead and play the wildfire here. And then I'm also going to pay 1 for nodes here. So I have 2 floating. And this is where these things can get really tricky. And honestly, I haven't done the math on it or anything like that. So sometimes I'm not sure. Well, in this case, it won't. Well, in this case, it would matter. In theory, what we could do right now is we could pitch the Blazing. Future Ballin here. I just wanted to clarify something. When I said pitch the Blazing, what I mean is, in theory, we could go ahead and Kano banish here, and that we would have to pay Blazing. Then when we Deja Vu'd, we could put the Blazing on top. So in theory, the benefits and drawbacks of this is, if we just Ragamuffins, we should be resource positive. If we draw something that's not a red, so in theory, it's positive resources. But at the same time, pitching it allows us to basically keep our Ragamuffins, and this can be good in some Floodgates lines, because when you're drawing blind, sometimes you might draw a combo piece. So if you drew a Blazing off of your Floodgates, for example, you could be able to basically Ragamuffins at Floodgates, and then you could cast it. But when we use the Ragamuffins, we essentially don't have the ability to anymore. In this case, since we're using a Deja Vu and we know what we're going to draw, this isn't a good play, but it's just something to bring up as a possible option in certain situations. Ragamuffins it, which essentially just gives us some flexibility in what we do. But first things first, let's go ahead and let the wildfire resolve. So we let the wildfire resolve. It's doing 6 arcane damage. Okay. So now we have amp 6 on everything. So the main thing we want to do here is we want to be able to play this Floodgates, and then we also want to be able to play, Destructive Aether Tide and Aether Flare. So we have 2 floating right now. So let's say that's going to pay for the Floodgates. So we really need 6 more resources to make sure we get the banish right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's going to be at least a red on top. So in this case, honestly, I feel pretty comfortable. Just go ahead and ragamuffins this blazing. There may be a case where you actually want to like try to pitch this blazing out of hand. But in this case, we're just gonna go with it. So we're gonna put the blazing on top. Eye of Ophidia is absolute gas. This is great. So next thing is we're gonna banish the blazing. Let me try to think if there's a way I want to do this. I'm actually going to pop the Spellfire here, so that way we can banish it without getting Eye out of hand, which basically lets us see what the next 2 cards are, and maybe if they're gas, we don't pop the Depot here. So now we're going to go ahead and put a Kano on the stack. We're going to let the Eye go first and not let this Kano resolve, just because I want to see what's on top. Gaze is gas. Okay, Gaze is absolute fire. Snapback is also pretty good, but what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to actually basically let the Gaze resolve, because basically it just lets us opt another 2. So we're going to leave the Gaze on top. We're going to get it, and we're going to play it. Since we've already played the Wildfire, this is basically, a free opt 2 here. Deja Vu and Twinning. So sorry, let me see what I got here. So we got Flare. I'm thinking. We have a blue in hand. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to put the Twinning on top. I don't think it really matters. Okay, but now we want to go ahead and get this on top. So the basic idea is we want to play this Floodgates, and then we want to draw 2 spells, 2 blues basically, and then play another spell. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pitch. That's gonna get Gaze, which is perfect here. And now we're gonna pop the Depot. So we're gonna pop the Depot, and we're gonna try to get this in the right order. So the way I think about this is what's kind of been great for me usually is if I can play Floodgates, draw 2, and then hit a Gaze on my next banish. But so the basic idea here is I want this Eye to be right after the Floodgates, and then either Destructive or Flare. I think we'll have enough resources for Flare. So I think ideally I'm actually going to have the Flare last for now. And again, this is honestly a little imperfect, but just to show you, how kind of you do it at the, seat of your pants. And, ideally you should really be counting these up and figuring everything out. But let's actually do it this way. I'm going to go Gaze, Flare. So Flare will be the banish after we draw these 2. But we do have the Eye op, so, in theory, we could be a little flexible there. Then I'm going to put these 2 on top, so they'll be drawn by the Floodgates, and the Floodgates on top. Now we'll let this banish. The Floodgates is now banished. Bada boom. So we'll go ahead and pop this E-Pot to pay for the Floodgates, and we know we're going to draw 2 blues, which is absolute gas. Now, in theory, I could pop this and pay for the Metacarpus here. Let me think if that makes sense. I think in this case, and in a lot of Kano cases, I like to kind of hold on to my Metacarpus and keep the extra resource, just because with the amount of 2-cost spells and even 1-cost spells now, it just sometimes I value having the more flexible resource when I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. And honestly, this combo might be overkill anyway. So we're going to Floodgates here. I'm not going to pay for the nodes, and this is going to draw 2. Bada boom, we have Eye, which is great. I'm not going to Eye right now. I'm going to Kano banish, but I'm not going to Eye because I already know what's on top of my deck. So we'll pitch this Aether Tide. It's a Flare. Boom, that's great. And next we will go ahead and Kano banish again. And we know there's a Gaze and another card on top. So it's an Arcane Twinning. So I think in this case, we're going to go ahead and take the Twinning. Just because we should have the, we know it's a guaranteed, we can play it. So now we have 2 resources left. So basically what we should be able to do is we're going to be able to Flare, and we're going to be able to pay the 1 here, because we have that extra resource, and then we'll be able to Arcane Twinning. Bada boom, bada bing. This will hit for 15, and Blazing's going to hit for a shit ton of damage. Bada boom, bada bing. So Blazing for 44. So basically, this is going to be like an 80 some damage turn. So if we let the turn end here, deck, We have a Deja Vu, which we went over before, but basically lets us put stuff from our pitch on top of our deck, which is going to be great here because we have a Will in hand. And then we have an E-Pot, which is going to give us 2 free resources here. So let's just act like we're in a situation where we have to fire here. Again, it's not always ideal to fire if you don't have a blazing, but if you have the resource for it, a wildfire can be pretty nasty in itself. But you're always encouraged to do the math. Realistically, I don't always do the math because a lot of times I'm just limit testing and just trying to have fun playing the game. But realistically, if we want to do as best as possible, we should try to do the math as much as possible. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clarity here. So we have an Aether Arc and Aether Flare on top. And the reason we want to clarity is we just want to make sure, is there something that we'd rather banish on top instead of like doing a bunch of shit beforehand, or, we want to make sure there's a blue that we can banish. In this case, I like both of these cards. Flare is going to give us exponential damage in this combo. And then, the 0 cost Aether Arc is going to be great here. So now I need to think about how I actually want to do this. So I think I'm definitely gonna, let's count here. So let's count just to give a good practice here. So let's think about how many resources we have to develop right now, or to commit right now. So we have 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then really you can think about this Kindle as a blue. So we really have 12 resources. So let's kind of count here. So we can banish twice. That'll banish let's go through the basics here. So we need to Kano banish and play Wildfire. So that's going to be 5 resources. We need a Storms to play this Wildfire. That's going to be 3 resources. So we need 8 just for that basic combo. If we want to get another banishes, we're going to 11. If we want to play the Flare, we're talking about 12. And then if we want to play, the Aether Arc at the end, we're basically going to need 15. So we did count 12 before, but I forgot about the Ragamuffins. So really, if you think about it, we're going to have 3, 6. This is going to become a blue. So 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we're gonna have another 3 here, so we're gonna have 12, and basically the rags, we're gonna be able to rag this Wildfire into another blue. So that's not always guaranteed. The reasons it's guaranteed right now is because we have 2 blues in hand and we have Deja Vu, so we can make sure the Kindle and the rags hit these. So then again, this is why Potion of Deja Vu is so great, especially when we start bringing in things like Will of Arcana, which basically just allow us to exponentially pump. So what I'm going to go ahead and do in this situation, because I know I have the resources, I know what's on top of my deck, and I know what's going to be on top of my deck from the Deja Vu, I'm going to go ahead and banish those first 2 cards because we know we're going to play them. Bada boom, bada beam. All right, so now we're 2 cards out of hand, which is going to make, getting this Wildfire easier. And then, we have the 2 cards we want to play here. So next step is we want to banish this Wildfire. And we also want to get this Kindle to resolve. So the important thing with Kindle is if you have no cards in hand, draw a card. That happens at resolution. It doesn't happen when you play the card. So that means we can put Kindle on the stack and then banish here. So there may be cases where you want to banish first and then Kindle, and there may be other cases where you want to, Kindle first and banish. In this case, we're going to go into Kindle first, so we have 1 card in hand. And at this point, we're going to pop the D-Pot to make sure we know what we're going to get off the Ragamuffins and then also the Kindle. So in this case, I don't think the order should matter here, but I'm going to go ahead and get the Will first just because it makes it a little easier. Oh, let's not Kano. We want a Rags here. We will put this on top of the deck. We have this Will, which is great. So then we want to make sure we banish before this Kindle resolves. So then we have the Wildfire banish, and we know we're going to get another blue, which is perfect. So if we, again, count up the resources here, we need 2, 3. This is free, so we need 3. We need 3 for this because we need the Storms for it, so 2 plus 3, so we need 6, and we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exactly. So that means we can't pay for Crucible or Metacarpus, but in this case, we already have 3 amp, and we're going to get a shit ton of kind of exponential damage here, so we shouldn't need to worry about it. So I'm trying to think of what the best way to do this is. I think we want to play the Flare first because it'll buff the Wildfire, which will in turn buff everything. I'm not sure if there's actually an optimal way to do it. I probably should do the math, but this will be a lot of damage either way. So again, we're going to make sure we don't pay for nodes here. So this Aether Flare will take the 3 amp we had before. So this should come in for 6. There you go. Next, we're going to go ahead and play this Wildfire. So this should come in for a lot, 10. Then we're going to go ahead and pop the E-Pot and the Spellfire Cloak, pop Storm, so we can play this Wildfire from Arsenal. This will come in from even more. There you go. And then, we have an Aether Arc at the end, which will come in for a significant amount of damage. So 25. If we end the turn here, so if I concede, we just look at the damage. That's 55 damage without a blazing. So imagine if that last Aether Arc was a blazing, we're talking about crazy absurd damage on that turn. So again, you don't always need a blazing here, and there'll be a lot of times like this where you don't necessarily have, your exact combo pieces you want, but you still need to fire. because maybe they'll be lethal on the stack, or their opponent is just presenting a great opportunity that you may not come to again, or their spell void got blasted, and there's just be a lot of cases where we necessarily don't have time to kind of think on Kano. We just got to go. And again, when you're starting out, I strongly encourage you to just honestly send hands you probably shouldn't send. I think it's just good for limit testing and figuring out what you can and can't do on this character, and then from there you can refine the kind of like, when should I fire, when should I not fire, etc. But I think if you have a wildfire and like some type of combo piece, whether it's like a floodgates that you can guarantee you'll draw 2 blues, or you have a blazing or something like that, go ahead and send them if you see your opponents are low on cards, just to get the practice in. I think it pays off in the long run just to test these situations. Again, but really what I would do is I would just practice the basic combo from here. But yeah, so that's a pretty complicated combo. It may seem as a new beginner, but you'll kind of figure it out. The main thing is, the main things that get complicated is how to use epots right and how do you get kindles resolved. I think those are kind of the hard things about Kano, and honestly, I mess it up sometimes. It can get a little complicated and confusing, but just practice and you'll get the hang of it eventually.